Hey guys, what's up? My name is Zach, and today we'll be doing a 2020 election prediction between Cory Booker and Donald Trump. So for this video, my shading is going to be a bit different than how it usually is, and my calls in general are going to be a bit different from how they usually are. This is because, one, 270 to Win has just introduced the tilt option for presidential elections, which is something I've wanted for a while. And in addition, we're now closer and closer to the 2020 election, which is now about a year and a half from now, which may not seem close, but in retrospect it is, considering how long I've been doing these 2020 elections for. And there's going to be some states which I can call safely in one side and the other, whereas I've been calling them likely for my past few predictions. And this is more applied to the Democrats because, just to give an example, I'm going to start filling in New Mexico. New Mexico is going to be pretty much solid for just about every single Democrat. And this is because I don't fill in states based on what margin I think they'll go to them by. I don't fill states based on vote share. I fill in states based on whether or not I think they'll go to that person or not. Like Cory Booker could lose the state or win the state by a smaller margin than Hillary Clinton did, but the likelihood of him losing the state entirely and it going to Trump is very, very small. And it's the same case for every other Democrat as well, which is why I'm now filling the state in as solid blue. And the same goes for pretty much every other state that Hillary Clinton won in 2016, including Virginia. In this case, I'm going to fill it in solidly for Booker. Same with New Hampshire, means 2 electoral votes, and Colorado. And my reasoning for these states is because Hillary Clinton in 2016 won all these states by, I believe, 5 percentage points or more, except for New Hampshire. I think she won that by a slimmer margin than that. But the odds of any Democrat losing these states to Trump in 2020 is very small, especially after they went to Hillary Clinton in 2016. And that's not speaking to Trump as a president. That's just looking at history when it comes to incumbent presidents. It's very unlikely for him to win those states against any candidate. And Cory Booker I consider to be a pretty good candidate. Cory Booker, as most of you know, is the incumbent senator from New Jersey. He's become very well known throughout the United States in the past year or so, as a result of his participation in the confirmation hearings for Trump's appointees to the cabinet. He's been very outspoken in those confirmation hearings, and that's how most people know him, just from his hard questioning and his very good speaking ability. He's a very good speaker. He's very charismatic. Before that, he was the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. He's also known for his success there. And there's going to be a few things that are going to go very good for Booker in this prediction. Like, I could see him doing very well amongst millennial voters in general. But then there's some things that I don't think are going to work out for him. I think that Booker is a very good speaker, like I said, but he doesn't have a whole lot of legislation and a whole lot of actual political, like, on-paper successes that he can accredit to himself, which I think is something that Trump's going to go after as well. Those are just 2 points that I think are going to play a big role in a Cory Booker candidacy. But those few states I can pretty safely call in Cory Booker's column. Nevada and Minnesota I will call likely in Cory Booker's column. And that's all the states that Hillary Clinton won going to Booker. Nevada and Minnesota, I can see a chance of it going to Trump if Cory Booker really doesn't play his cards right. But honestly, the likelihood of these 2 states going to Trump is very small. I think that Cory Booker will have a very good time at appealing to middle-class voters here, millennial voters here as well. I think he'll do very good with. African-American appeal is going to be a big factor as well. I don't think that Cory Booker is going to lose out on the Hillary Clinton crowd in these states. Like, Cory Booker is also known for being a very liberal member of the Senate, and that could be a negative in a number of states, but in states like Nevada and Minnesota, I think it could be a plus, because it means that Booker's going to keep the same voters that voted for Hillary Clinton, and I believe he'll expand on that as a result of the anti-Trump sentiment that exists in both these states. Texas, however, I believe will go likely in Trump's column. Cory Booker, as I said before, is known to be a very liberal member of the Senate. He's one of the, I think, the second or third most liberal members of the Senate currently. At least most people rank him as such. And that will not do good in Texas. To win Texas as a Democrat, you'll need crossover support, or you'll need some degree of a populist approach, like with Bernie Sanders. Cory Booker will not have that. Cory Booker is by no means a populist candidate. One con for Booker as well is I think he'll lose out on a huge amount of progressives. And Cory Booker does list himself as a progressive, but he does take money, lots of money, from Wall Street. So I think that many progressives paint him as, and especially many die-hard Bernie Sanders supporting progressives, paint him as kind of a fake progressive, in that he claims that he supports these measures, but then takes money from Wall Street, which is the very thing that progressives go out of their way to go against. So I think that's going to be a con against him as well. But I think that's something that's going to apply mostly to the Democratic primary, and not so much against Trump. I highly doubt that Trump will be able to say that Cory Booker takes money from Wall Street. Well, I think they'll look hypocritical on Trump's part for him to go after Cory Booker for that. And he's also announced that he's not taking any money from PACs, which I think is a smart move on his part in appealing to the progressive base. But for Texas, I don't think there's a shot at Cory Booker winning this state. African-American appeal doesn't go far here. His speaking ability, I think, will do well for him, but I don't think that he is going to take this state from Trump. I forgot to fill in South Carolina. My bad. Going over to Michigan, I will call this state likely in Cory Booker's column, and this comes down to the fact that Trump's approval here is very low. I think that Booker will take advantage of that. I think his speaking ability will reverberate with a number of Michigan middle-class voters. And I think that for most Democrats in general, it's hard. I'd say that Michigan is the most likely state to flip to the Democrats in 2020. I think there's a very high chance of it doing that. I don't think there's a very good chance of it going to Trump, even if there's a candidate that's a lot worse than Booker. I think that it's probably going to go to the Democrats. Just looking at the margin, it went to Trump in 2016. So I'd say that Cory Booker would take this state pretty solidly into his column. Same with Michigan. Not Michigan, my bad. Pennsylvania, I'd say, is likely in Cory Booker's column. I think that regionalism and the fact that he is from Newark and he will be able to appeal to maybe more eastern Pennsylvania voters will be a big plus for Cory Booker. As I said before, his speaking abilities appeal to millennials. African American appeal will also go far here. And in general, Cory Booker, I think, has one of the highest appeals to millennial voters out of any of the other Democratic candidates. And this is because he's really crafted his entire career around appealing to millennials. He's the only vegan senator from the only vegan senator in the U.S. Senate. He also has a number of very touching stories, I think, to go along with it. Like he saved one of his constituents in Newark from a fire by breaking into the building himself and saving him, suffering burns on his hands. As mayor of Newark, he drove around till 4 a.m. To patrol the streets. He has a number of... In general, I think people can paint him as a camera hog and a showboat, which I think Trump will absolutely do to Cory Booker. But those stories, I think, and especially in elections, will do very well with voters. I just realized I forgot to fill in that 2nd district in Nebraska. My bad. Wisconsin, I will also fill in likely for Cory Booker. And this is for the same reasons for the rest of the Rust Belt. In general, I think that Cory Booker will do very good in the Rust Belt. Just because, again, Trump, I think, the anti-Trump sentiment, Cory Booker, I think, will use very strongly to his advantage. His speaking ability, I think, will go a long way when it comes to these states. And I think his appeal to middle-class voters will also go a very long way in these few states, especially coming from an area like Newark. Going over to leaning states, I would consider Georgia to be leaning in Trump's column. And leaning no longer means toss-up. I would consider the tilting column to mean a toss-up state. But leaning just... I'll fill it into the description. You can read it below. It's going to take me a while to explain it if I take the time to explain it in this video. But I think that Cory Booker and his African-American appeal will go far in the state. Speaking ability, absolutely, that will go very far in a state like Georgia. But I don't see it flipping if he is the candidate in this prediction. Iowa, same deal. I don't see it flipping from Trump to Booker. This is because I don't think that Cory Booker has a tremendous amount of Midwestern appeal, especially. I think that Trump will do very well by painting him as a generic liberal, a Nancy Pelosi liberal, if you may. And I think that will turn off a number of Iowa voters, and I don't see him appealing very strongly to the state of Iowa as a whole, which would land Iowa in Trump's column once again. Same deal with Nebraska second. I think it'll be closer than Iowa, but I wouldn't consider that district to be a toss-up. And I don't think that Cory Booker will do very well in here for the same reason that I wouldn't do well, for the rest of the Midwest. Now going over to tilting states, So these states I would consider to be toss-ups in this race, meaning they can go one way or another, but I'm going to try to call them to the best of my ability. Maine second, I would consider to be tilting in Trump's column. We did see this district technically go to the Republican in the 2018 midterms, although it was called for the Democrat. That's because of the state's different voting laws, but the Republican did win a majority of the vote here. If Trump's campaigning here rather than that Republican, I do think that it will go to Trump once again, just because I don't think Cory Booker will have tremendous amount of appeal to people. For the same reason that he really doesn't have that much appeal to voters in the Midwest. That same logic can apply to that district in Maine. Going over to Arizona, I'd call that state tilting in Trump's column. I don't think that Cory Booker will have a tremendous amount of crossover appeal. I don't think that he'll be able to get a number of moderates to support him. Mostly because I think that Trump will do a very good job painting him as a generic liberal, and as a Nancy Pelosi liberal, as I was saying before, which would land Arizona in Trump's column. Going down to Florida, as I said in my past few videos, we have seen Florida becoming more and more in Trump's column and more in Trump's favor, especially looking at his approval rating in the state, which has remained pretty high, remarkably high, considering the state's competitive nature. And if it's between Booker and Trump, again, I think that Trump will do very well at painting Booker as a generic liberal, and maybe his ties to Wall Street will also be a factor here, which would amount to Florida going to Trump, at least tilting in Trump's column. North Carolina is a state that I think will be very, very competitive, arguably the most competitive, although I'd say that Ohio would be the most competitive in this scenario. Cory Booker's African-American appeal will be a huge factor in this state, along with his speaking ability, along with his affluency, which would appeal to those suburban voters, which dominate the North Carolina demographic. And with those factors, I would honestly characterize North Carolina going to Cory Booker. I think that African-American appeal would drive out voters, not as much as it did for Obama, but I do believe that Cory Booker, along with the African-American appeal, along with that appeal to suburban voters, would go a long way. And now for Ohio, I think that this would be a very, very competitive state in this scenario, because Cory Booker's middle-class appeal will go far in a state like this, but Trump's appeal to the more rural areas of the state will also make it very competitive. But in the end, I do think that Cory Booker will be able to take the state, and it really comes down to the fact that Trump's approval here has been shaky, as you all may know, and although you may look at the 2018 elections and see that not a single district in the state was won by a Democrat, you have to acknowledge that the districts in the state are heavily gerrymandered in the Republicans' favor. And if you look at the actual vote share, it was very narrowly in the Republicans' column, and that really may not apply to Trump so much, because this state really is becoming more and more of a moderate Republican state and not so much a Trump state. And I think that those moderates will favor Booker over Trump, given the choice. All right, so this is the prediction. As you can see, it's very competitive. Booker has a very decent chance, more than a decent chance. It's most likely going to go to him if he's the candidate. I can see him very easily losing Ohio and North Carolina in this scenario. And I don't think that there's a good chance at him winning Iowa and Georgia. But Trump, the only way that I can see him winning is if he were to carry both Ohio, North Carolina, keep every state that's tilting in his column, and then maybe flip a state like Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania and he would have to flip both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, I think, in order to make this a win for him, which is very, very unlikely. Booker in general, I think, would have an 80 to 85% chance of winning against Trump if he was the candidate. And this really shouldn't come as a surprise. He's poised himself as a very vocal anti-Trump critic. He has poised himself as a leader of the anti-Trump movement. And I think that if he were to unite that anti-Trump sentiment around him, along with his speaking ability, along with his millennial appeal, I think that will pave his way to the presidency. Alright, so hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know I'm posting a lot less frequently lately, and I can't promise that it's going to change. I'm just going to post whenever I can. But I am keeping track of the candidates that are announcing their candidacy. and I will continue to make videos. I plan to make a video about Kamala Harris relatively soon, maybe Tulsi Gabbard as well, but who knows. But if you like the video, leave a like, share, and subscribe. It's the only way for small channels like mine to grow. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.